So you've probably heard about the golden rule, which on the face of it sounds very simple, but in actual truth, it's one of the laws that is most difficult to implement or to live by. In case you haven't figured out what law this is, I'm talking about the golden rule. We will find it in Gospels in the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, which says, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets." Very interesting. Do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophet. Basically, that last line there talks about how doing that, treating others the way you would want them to treat you, brings together the entire gospel, the law and the prophets. That's what the gospel is all about. It's about treating others as you would want them to treat you. So we are going to look at that law in the context of business, because that's what we do here at Narrow Root Ventures. We are all about Christian entrepreneurship, biblical entrepreneurship. So what does this mean for us? Now, first of all, the first line, the first three words, so in everything. Everything means everything. And so we are being told to do this in every sphere of our lives, every aspect of life, business included. So as you trade as an entrepreneur, in everything, you are supposed to treat others the same way you would have them treat you. So when you look at business, for the most part, most businesses are started by entrepreneurs who go out into the market looking for a solution to a problem they have faced. And once they fail to get a solution, they decide to do something about it and produce that solution so that they meet the need that they were out there to need. Now, two things we need to consider as far as that example is concerned. Number one, you come out into the market wanting to buy something. So you're first a client, you're first a customer before you become an entrepreneur. And that's the default state as you go into the market. You're first seeking to buy, seeking to patronize, seeking to acquire a service or a product. And once you fail to get it and decide to do something about it, then you become a vendor or a producer or a seller of that service. So we already know what it means to be clients. We already know what it means to be customers. So as you trade, do you often, is it in your practice to transpose yourself from a vendor to a buyer so that you interrogate and look at the product or the service you're offering from a buyer's perspective? Now, it's good and it's great. I fully encourage securing feedback from your clients. But even before you do that, it's very, very helpful for you to look at your service or your product from the market perspective. You are already a customer. You're already a buyer. Always look back and ask yourself, if you're making a product, would I buy this product? Would I buy it at this price point? Or is it very highly priced, probably beyond what I can afford or what the market can bear? Those are critical questions that we need to be in a routine of doing, a process of introspection, making sure that we are assessing the products and the services that we produce from our own perspective as buyers. Now, that's exactly what we did when we were setting up Patori Leather Goods, a business that we ran. My wife and I helped in finding. I was still working in missions, and my job required me to travel around the world quite a bit. And so when I was out there, particularly in Europe, and getting into all these markets and shops and maybe airport stores that were selling very nice leather items, and I just have this attachment to leather. And there's a particular belt that I looked at, and it was very nicely done, but it was way beyond what I could afford at that time. There is no way I could have justified spending the amount of money that they were asking for a belt that I would put on maybe for a couple of years. So I come back home and I can't find such quality when it comes to a belt, but there are many belts out there at price points that I could afford, but not the right quality. So as we were setting up the business, there was this matrix that I was trying to balance to bring the quality comparable, probably better, but comparable at least with what I was seeing out there in Europe, but at a price point that made sense to my economy and made sense to to this market and made sense to my pocket. And that was not an easy thing to achieve. But with the sourcing of raw materials, with labor that was probably more reasonable than probably the labor costs in Europe, I was able to get a belt done at a cost that I could comfortably sell it in the market and get a small profit. Not much, but something bearable. And so when we made these belts, we started selling the belts. And I can tell you, we scratched an itch in this market because we have sold a lot of those belts and we continue to sell them to this day. Now, what we do with those belts, and the way I started with those belts, there is a way that would probably give us something similar but at a much lower cost. So if you know the anatomy of the belt of a belt, for example, for most belts, there is a difference between the leather that is used on the outer side and the one that is used on the inner side. The inner side is made usually of a cheaper quality leather called the lining, or that's what is normally referred to by people who make belts, the lining. The upper part is made of a top grain leather or full grain leather, depending on the thickness that you desire for your belt. But what we decided to do, instead of having a cheaper lining on the inner side and then you start experiencing breakages with that lining 3 or 4 years into usage of such a belt, we decided to use the same material on the outer and the inner side of the leather, so of the belt. So if you look at our belts, the many thousands that we have sold, it is made, and we continue to make them to this day with the same material on the outer side and on the inner side. Now, I did that because I wanted a belt of that quality. And once I got one, which I still use today, I proceeded to make that my standard procedure for manufacturing belts. And so there are many other people out there who are wearing similar belts to the one I wear. And I can guarantee them that that belt will not break, not today, not tomorrow. I keep telling people that that belt, even the one that I have that is going to 7 or 8 years now, I will probably hand it over to my grandson if I live long enough to get there. Because I can vouch for it, because I know the quality of the material that we used, I know the quality of the stitching, I know the extent to which we went to bind those two pieces together, and those I can guarantee they will not be breaking apart any time soon. And that's exactly what I'm encouraging us to do. When you're making a product, when you're fashioning a service, do not spare the expense or the effort to make a wonderful service or product. Because in as much as you're spending a bit more right now, that money will come back somehow. It will surely come back because the quality will sell. So what I want us to do today as we are looking at this passage, we may have the desire to know what the market is saying about our products, but don't forget the fact that you are part of that market. You are a consumer in that market. You see, enterprises are set up by people who go out to look for solutions to problems that they have encountered, which means that before we even become producers, we are first customers. And so in an introspective process, I encourage you to be looking at your item from a buyer's perspective and ask yourself the question, can I buy such a product? And would I buy it at the price point that they are selling it? And that right there is the first step of any market intelligence. And that market intelligence is credible because you can tell, am I biased or not? You can be sure that that is a credible what you're getting from the market. So what I want to suggest as we look at this whole equation of applying the golden rule to our businesses, three things. Number one, when you're creating something, just like I created the belt or the watch straps that we started making for our watches. It started with my watch. I was looking for a quality leather, good strap for my watch, and I was not able to find any. So I decided to do something about it and made the first one, and we continue to sell those watch straps to this day. And we make them exactly the same way we made our first one. We continue to do that. So when you're creating something, when you're introducing a product in the market, create it for yourself. Something that you would feel happy to buy, something that you would feel rewarded to own, and something that you would be proud to associate with. Make it for yourself. If it's a service, if it's a product, one that you would be happy to be identified with. Create for yourself. Number two, when you market to yourself, because you are part of the market. What value proposition are you conveying to others? Now, I talked about the belt. I tell myself, if I live long enough, I'll hand this belt over to my grandson. Now, that's a message right there. That's a selling message that you can convey to your customers, because there is something intrinsic in an item that has outlived generations. I still remember my grandfather used to carry around a leather bag, which is in our household today. And when I look at it, not only do I remember him, but just knowing that my grandfather used to carry this bag around, it just gives me a lot of satisfaction. And though the bag is torn here and there today, we cannot give it away. We cannot throw it off. But if it did not have that attachment with my grandfather, I'm sure that bag would not be in our house today. But there is that intrinsic value that we gain. Now, that's a value proposition. That's a selling point. So when you're communicating your message to the public or to the market, imagine that you're part of that market. And so whatever value proposition you are conveying, make sure it's one that would convince you to lean towards that product or to lean towards that service. Now, when you're selling, sell to yourself. Sell to yourself. Is the price that you're offering good for your market? Good for your pocket? Imagine that there is somebody like you who wants to buy. How much would they be willing to pay or to spend in purchasing such a product? What about after-sales service? Supposing something goes wrong with it, do you accept returns of those products? So whatever you would be comfortable with, or whatever you would desire from a vendor who is selling you something, turn around and offer the same package to the other person, so that in everything you will be doing to others what you would have them do to you. And when you have these things in place, it might appear on the surface like you're not charging as much, or you're not getting a big enough margin because you're having to spend too much in the inputs and the quality materials. But I can guarantee you from experience, the number of belts we have sold, we would not have sold as many belts if we were taking shortcuts. Now, people keep coming back. You would imagine that if you get two belts, maybe a black one and a brown one, that will last you for your lifetime, that you would probably not come back to us. No, that's not true. We have seen it. The market has proven. And there's so many of you out there. You know yourselves. You've bought belt 1, belt 2 from us, come for a third one, and then bought for your dad and bought for your brother. And that becomes probably the only reasonable gift you can give to any man out there when you're talking about men's belt. And so you keep giving everybody the item that you can vouch for because you have tried it and experienced it and you have seen that it is of an impeccable quality. So the golden rule, whatever you do to others, make sure you're doing exactly what you would have them do to you. And this is often one of the most ignored secrets to business success. I want you to try it and let me know what your experience is. You can come back to this video, whatever, however long after we have released it, and just tell us what happened when you started looking at the market from your own perspective as a buyer. I can guarantee you we have seen it work. Whatever you do, do to others what you would expect them to do to you.